What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Unsolved Enigma. You got your boy Aaron in the building with my lovely wife beside me, Nicole. And today we're going to get into a real interesting one, and we do have a trigger warning, so I'm going to let her go ahead and get into all that deep stuff right there. Go ahead.
This video is going to contain graphic descriptions and images of crime scenes and violence. So just a heads up, we've got some seriously graphic pictures of someone that is deceased. So just a heads up for anybody that's watching. That way you know ahead of time.
If you don't like looking at graphic stuff, either go to another one, look away, play it in the background, so you get the view. You know what I mean? You can do like audiobook. There you go. So all right, let's go ahead and get into it. So this one is going to be the mysterious case of Kendrick Johnson, and I'm sure everybody knows about it. It's recently been brought back up into the media, which we figured it was a perfect time to bring a lot of information, which a lot of people don't know, and a lot of people do know, but we want to shed a lot more light into it, so we can bring more attention to it. So here we go. Now, Kendrick was born on October 10th, 1995 to Kenneth and Jackie Johnson. And January 11, 2013, his body was discovered in a rolled up gym mat in the gym at Lowndes High School in Valdosta. I believe I said that right, in Georgia.
On January 10th, the day before he was found, Kendrick was going to a game after school, so his mom was waiting up for him, and he didn't show up home when he was supposed to. So she waited and waited, because maybe he got caught up talking to some friends or stayed behind the game.
Or he was doing young hoodlum stuff. Not saying he was, but I was a young kid, and I mean, there was some times where we stayed out late, we saw some girls or stuff like that, you know what I mean? We get distracted.
So that's what she thought. Maybe he was distracted after the game and held up. So it got later and later, and he didn't show up. She called him over and over, and there was no answer, and she thought, okay, maybe he's still at the school. So she got into her car and drove past the school, and the school was dark and closed down, and nobody was there.
So once it had passed midnight, and Kendrick hadn't returned any of his mom's phone calls, hadn't returned home, of course, like any other parent, she began to get worried, so she filed a police report. The following morning, she went to the school to check to see if he came there. That way, if he was out the night before, he would have to show up to school, and she realized he wasn't there. And she also realized that his last two classes, he was marked absent from those the day prior as well.
So his school had two gyms. A lot like mine was, it kicked in when we were growing up in school. So we had the new gym that was all nice and renovated and bright and everything. And then we had the old gym that was super dingy and it was poorly lit, and we had cheer practice in that gym. So theirs was similar to where they had the new gym with, nice and shiny, and then the old gym that hadn't been upgraded at all, which is where these gym mats were stored.
During the morning that his mom was there, seeing if he was there and he was marked absent, the school head office was getting notified that Kendrick's body was discovered in the gym in one of the stand-up gym mats, which is I think about like 6 feet or some shit like that.
Yeah.
So it was standing up, and he was head down in one of those mats, and they spotted him by his 2 feet being in the air.
Yeah, they were sticking out, and some students saw it. So at this point, a teacher pulled down the mat and called the police, but nobody unrolled the mat or checked on the person that was inside until the police arrived. The paramedics got there and said immediately that it was a crime scene, but I guess the sheriff's office and the school disagreed because the family was notified that he was found, and the body was barely off of school property before the sheriff's office was releasing a statement saying that it was an accident before an autopsy had even been performed.
Also, one of the reasons they didn't move the body or try to open it up, I believe the smell of decomposition. They said that a real foul odor was coming from that area, so they didn't. If anybody's been around a dead body, you know that smell, and it's ratchet. Whether it's animal or anything, the smell of decomposition is horrible. So that's why that was
that quickly. The next day,
we'll get more into it. So that was supposedly one of the reasons that nobody tried to open up the mat and stuff like that. And also, I'm thinking maybe They tried to, if his foot was hanging out, maybe they tried to move his foot didn't move, or if they tried to talk to him and they didn't, you know what I mean? Or everybody was just freaking out. I mean, me personally, I would have opened up the mat and tried to
resuscitate him.
I don't know about resuscitating. It depends. I would have opened it up so I can assess the situation.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
He could have still been alive.
That's why I said, but that's what I'm saying. I would have assessed the situation.
Exactly.
So Kendrick and one of his friends shared a pair of shoes that was like strictly for gym, like a pair of gym kicks. The school had lockers you could purchase, and they didn't want to do it. So what they did was, when they were sharing their shoes, one would have them and they would stash them behind these gym mats. Between classes, one of them will grab them and then he'll put them back, and then the other one will come and grab them, so on and so forth.
So that way they both had a pair of shoes and nobody had to pay for the locker. So students also told law enforcement that this was common and that a lot of people did this. They stashed these shoes behind their mats and got it when it was time for gym class. So the statement that law enforcement made was that Kendrick had climbed up the mats, because they were standing up straight, climbed up the mats to reach in for his shoe and fallen in or scooted himself in, and had gotten stuck and died of positional asphyxia, which from what we read is not common. So basically,
I think they said like maybe
0.01 cases of autopsies are ruled positional asphyxiation. So they're basically saying that he got stuck hanging upside down and died from lack of oxygen, for being upside down, I guess.
This story has so many inconsistencies and a lot of shady shit going on with the school, the police officers, the whole nine, everything. Right from the jump, Kendrick's parents believed that it was a cover-up going on between the school, the police. They were trying to get their story straight, even before the parents were notified. Not just the media, but before the parents were notified that she was in the school. And that's the crazy part, you know what I mean? I couldn't imagine looking for my kid and my kid's dead in the school. You know what I mean? Like, my condolences. I couldn't imagine. I'm sorry. That's crazy. From the beginning, Kendrick's family believed that he was murdered. It was a cover-up. It was also strange that he supposedly went into this mat head first between third and fourth period, and this is a gym that a lot of people supposedly hung out in. People were in and out of the gym all day, and nobody heard him yell for help. Nobody heard him screaming. Nobody heard any movement going on behind the bleachers. And if his feet were supposedly sticking up, how did nobody see those?
Exactly, especially their white socks too. Against a blue mat, it sticks out. So there were several other things that stood out as odd in this case. Kendrick's shoes were off and looked like they were tucked up beside him. Another shoe, which they assume was the shoes that he was reaching for, was under Kendrick on the floor, but there was blood on the floor underneath the shoe, but there was no blood on the shoe, which doesn't make any sense. His shoulder width was also 19 inches wide, and the entrance to the mat was only 14 and a half inches. So people wondered, how could he have scooted himself in there? There were also streaks of blood on a nearby wall, which was determined not to be Kendrick's, but was not investigated any further, so nobody knows whose blood it was or how it got there. There was a second shoe at the scene that was not collected as evidence. At the very least, these issues should have been further investigated, and they weren't.
So initial autopsy was performed and ruled that the death was accidental and was consistent with the positional asphyxiation. And the Kendrick family, I assume they didn't agree with the findings, so they hired their own pathologist, Mr. William R. Anderson, and he performed his own autopsy. So the second autopsy concluded that he died from blunt force trauma, as indicated by marks on the right side of his neck and soft tissue damage on that side as well. He ruled that the death of Kendrick Johnson was not accidental, therefore it had to be a homicide.
The other thing that the autopsy found was that sometime after Kendrick's body had left the school after being rolled up in the mat and went through autopsy and got to the funeral home, his organs were missing and his body had been stuffed with newspapers. So the funeral home that had processed Kendrick's body said that when they received the body, there were no organs in it. And so the funeral home that processed his body after the initial autopsy that was performed by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation said that they never received the organs from the coroner.
Organ harvesting is a high commodity. Just talking about like 40,000 for a kidney on the black market.
Why do you know that?
I know a lot of stuff. I'm serious.
I knew you.
You look it up. I've seen a lot of documentaries, man. I know. If you wake up in a hotel that you didn't pay for in a bathtub full of ice, just know somebody's $40,000 richer, bro. You got two. You only need one. So I'm just saying, if you need 40,000, I know
we are not encouraging violence.
No, it's not violence.
Or organ harvesting.
Okay, there you go. I'm just kidding, y'all. So from what we read, in high-profile and controversial cases, the organs are sometimes removed for further investigation, but they'll be placed in like a case or somewhere where they can be retrieved. Basically, what?
I just imagine organs in a briefcase.
Again, you got the cash, you got the goods. Just opens up a Louis suitcase and just a heart, a lung. You know what I mean? You just got dry ice sitting there. They usually, the organs that they might need for later on for investigation or evidence, they'll preserve them in case they need them. Not preserve them in a case, like I said 5 minutes ago.
So they won't send them to the funeral home.
So the organs being removed and not returned wasn't necessarily completely out of the ordinary, but the organs were nowhere to be found. So therefore, the coroner didn't have them, the funeral home didn't have them, his body was just stuffed full of tissue, and nobody knows where they are. So the funeral home said that the organs were, and I quote, destroyed by the natural process and discarded by the prosecutor before the body was sent back to Valdosta. And when I say that, I do not mean that the prosecutor was the one who disposed of them himself.
He told the funeral home.
Thank you, yeah. He was the one who told them that.
So with the organs missing, the funeral home is still responsible for filling the void where the organ should have been. So they usually use a type of cotton.
I thought they used embalming fluid.
Yeah, but when you use embalming fluid, there's still organs in there.
So were the organs missing when they found the body?
When it can't, no. Supposedly the organs were there for the autopsy, but they were not at the funeral home. So when a funeral home gets a body that doesn't have the organs, because it does happen, they have to fill the voids where the organs would have been. So generally they fill the voids with a type of cotton, and it's kind of a dated practice to use newspaper to fill the voids.
Not that dated though. Like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were still doing it. It's not frowned upon, it's not bad. It's just some people still do it, like the old fashioned ways. They might still do it, but they usually have a more modern way to do it.
Which would be the cotton.
Not necessarily just the cotton. I think there's a more modern way than that too nowadays. I mean, cotton is the normal brand, but who wants to fill their family body with the Daily Press?
The Johnson family filed a complaint with a regulatory board against the funeral home.
The Tory board?
Regulatory board.
Oh, regulatory, okay.
The later investigation by the Georgia Secretary of State's office found that even though it was not in best practice for the funeral home to use newspaper to fill his body, they weren't violating any rules.
So Lieutenant Stride Jones, weird name, who headed up the initial investigation, stated, and I quote, "We never had credible information that indicated Kendrick Johnson's death was anything other than an accident." So Kendrick's family disagreed, which obviously I do too. You know what I mean? So they believed he was murdered, and they obtained a lawyer, which definitely a smart move to do. So on October 31st of 2013, the U.S. Attorney of the Middle District of Georgia said that they would open up formal review into his death.
In November of 2013, almost 300 hours of surveillance tape from 35 cameras that covered the school and gym was released to CNN following a court request. These tapes were missing over an hour of footage on one camera and 2 hours and 10 minutes of footage on the other. There were also large differences in timestamps between several cameras by as much as 20 minutes. CNN enlisted a forensic analyst to pore over this footage. They found that some of the lapses in coverage were due to camera systems that were not synchronized, and other missing footage was due to the camera's motion activated function not being triggered. Apparently, in the area where Kendrick's body was discovered, it was outside of the range of all surveillance cameras.
Ironic.
Right? How convenient. Attorneys for the Johnson family felt that the camera footage was edited as part of a cover-up, which they felt had been going on since the beginning.
So Kendrick's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit, claimed that Kendrick was murdered by two of his classmates after he was lured by a female student. So in July of 2015, federal authorities seized cell phones, computers, electronics belonging to an FBI agent, his wife, and his two sons, the two names that were in the wrongful death suit. Brian and Brandon Bell were notified in November of 2014 that they were targets in the federal investigation. However, surveillance video showed Brian in class on the complete opposite side of the school, and his brother Brandon was he was either on the bus or he was already at a wrestling tournament, so he wasn't even in the school at that time. So this is yet another incident where both doubt and confusion has been cast on this case, which, given these boys' father being an FBI agent, I'm not surprised that loopholes and, you know what I mean, let's do this, a lot of stuff being thrown over here while stuff is happening over there, you know what I'm saying?
Kendrick's family requested in June of 2018 that Kendrick's body be exhumed and a third autopsy be performed. The results of that autopsy held up that it was blunt force trauma that he died from. And one of the reasons that the parents were really fighting that this was an accidental death is because what Kendrick looked like when he was pulled out of the mat. The picture that was released was not when they pulled him out of the mat. That picture was actually after autopsy. So it was just a little misleading because originally everybody thought that the picture was right after you get pulled out of the mat.
That was the one I originally saw, and that's when I said, I mean, even still, I mean, that was right after.
The Emmett Till one
yeah.
that you're talking about is after the autopsy. So at that point, not to be graphic, but why we did a trigger warning, when they do an autopsy, they cut your skin, push it forward, check your brain and stuff. So the picture that was taken of him after, there's been fluids injected, his skin's been all moved around. So it's graphic, but still, there's lots of footage that points to this not just being, oh, he died because he was hanging upside down for too long.
No.
So that's what really got the family going on this, and also got the community behind them pushing for more answers, because it just, so many things in this case didn't add up.
A lot of the stuff. I mean, why wasn't there blood on that shoe?
Exactly. And so
And how did the shoe get there?
Yeah.
Inside? No, I'm saying so if there was blood and he was inside the mat, the blood, shoe, and this is like the center of the mat, and then he's up inside of the shoe.
But no blood on the shoe. It doesn't make
You know what I'm saying? So how did the shoe get inside of the center of the mat without getting any blood on it?
Exactly. It doesn't make any sense. But Georgia closed it out as an accidental death. But in the beginning of March of this year, so the current month we're in, Lowndes County Sheriff Ashley Polk confirmed that his office was reopening the investigation.
Shout outs to him.
Officially. So he was retired at the time of Kendrick's death, but he came back to win re-election in 2016.
I guarantee you he probably saw a lot of shady stuff going on, and that's why he was like, nah, this is not what I want my department, my legacy being left at, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And he had stated when he got reelected that if he could get all of the files from both state and federal agencies, that he would go through them and reopen this case. So his initial request for documents was denied in 2019.
So Marcus Coleman, an activist and a spokesman for the Johnson family, helped the sheriff get these documents released after the high-profile killings of African Americans, including Breonna Taylor, George Floyd. He sought the release of the 2015 grand jury proceedings after seeing Kentucky Attorney General do the same thing during the Breonna Taylor case. So he went to the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Middle District of Georgia and found out that they recused themselves. And they, I don't want nothing to do with this. I'm backing myself up out of this. And then they transferred it to the Northern District of Ohio, where it had been transferred. Now, peep this. Georgia, Ohio. Why?
It doesn't make...
Why?
I've never heard of...
Like, come on. If that's not a red flag, bro,
I've never heard of a case being transferred to a whole other state where the case didn't happen in.
I mean, in some cases they might do it just because of how much media attention or how much, yeah.
Yeah, but this never even made it to court case.
Yeah.
This never made it to court case because they'll do, like you're saying, if there's too much media attention, they'll move a court case because they don't feel that the jurors in that area can be objective.
Yeah, they'll feel like they'll be more biased. Yeah, see that I don't. I mean, maybe they saw something in it that, you know what I mean, was shady, and they were like, I don't want nothing to do with this.
But I've even heard like.
But I feel like if you saw something shady, and y'all the U.S. attorney, that's where you should have said something.
And even if it was transferred to a different area of Georgia, but this is literally transferred to Ohio.
That's a completely different part of the country.
So the family of Kendrick Johnson and Coleman met with the U.S. attorney in Cleveland in November and requested that the case be reopened. In February of this year, Polk's office received 17 file cabinet boxes full of evidence, including hard drives and documents. On March 5th, Sheriff Polk met with the family to inform them that the case had been formally reopened.
Polk stated that he will personally lead the investigation, re-interview individuals, and talking to new people as well. They've already begun conducting interviews, which, I mean, with it being this later on, I don't know how many people are going to remember much, and a lot of people probably already pick sides. If you understand what I'm saying. So it seems like that town was already side picked. You know what I mean? From the gate. Polk stated that this process would take roughly around 6 months to go through everything and, you know what I mean, try to get all the information. He stated that this is the first time anyone has ever had all of the evidence, the federal evidence, the state's evidence, everything all in one place at one time. So it's going to take him a little bit to go over all that information, weed everything out, and try to figure out what's right. I mean, not what's right, but you know what I mean? What's credible and what's not, and try to prepare everything. He basically wanted to see if, like she said, if there were any discrepancies or if there were any contradictions or if people's testimonies changed, you know what I mean? If their stories switched up. His office already had the state investigation documents, of course, but the federal documents alone is what was in those 17 boxes in those hard drives. So that alone, you could just imagine all the evidence he got to go through.
Oh yeah. On March 19th, so a couple days ago, Sheriff Polk received an audio recording, supposedly, of someone confessing to the murder from Kendrick's mother. He stated that Kendrick's family had a recording that they had actually purchased from someone who said that it could be valuable as far as saying who possibly had committed the crime.
Why would you sell it to the family if it was?
Because people will do anything to take advantage of desperate people. But they said that it would be valuable as far as saying who possibly committed the crime and change their situation. So Sheriff Polk said that they are trying to authenticate the audio confession and determine whether it's real, determine the chain of custody, etc. But he did state if it's a hoax, it's a very, very cruel hoax to do to Mrs. Johnson.
I feel like there should be a charge for people who do stuff like this. There isn't one, and that's the sad part. I don't believe there is one. You know what I'm saying? But there should be something for people who go, you know what I mean? Because remember, we did the one case where Lashaya Stein case, the first case we did, where they were
she was extorting money.
Basically, yeah, they were extorting and poaching her mom while she was trying to look for her daughter, saying that, oh, she's seen her, this, that, and the third.
And all, like,
yeah, blah, 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 blah. Like, you gotta be a sick individual, yo.
So that's where the case is at right now. This is Georgia we're talking about. No offense to anybody that lives in Georgia unless you're racist and then full offense. But...
Big facts, and I want you to say something.
But, I mean, it's the South. There's a lot of history of a lot of racial...
There's a difference between Atlanta and Georgia. Atlanta is in Georgia. Atlanta's over here. Georgia's over here. Sometimes Georgia come over here, but Atlanta never goes over there. You know what I'm saying? So you do the math.
There's a history of racial tension in the South, obviously, and a lot of people have not let it go. So that there is suspicions that this was a racially motivated crime.
It could have been. I mean, were those two boys he had beef with, were they white or black?
What do you think? They were white. So.
No offense, I'm just curious. I didn't know. Yeah. I don't want nobody to get offended.
So that is a question that's on a lot of people's minds. If this was a racially motivated occurrence, whether it was a crime or whether it wasn't, whether it was fully investigated or whether it wasn't, whether it was covered up.
I believe it was a cover up, especially once I heard the FBI agent, but I don't even know if they were actually involved. You know what I'm saying? Well, I don't know if they were involved, those two boys.
Yeah.
Maybe their dad had something to do with it, maybe not. I still would like to know where his organs went. Also, we would love to know y'all's thoughts on it. If y'all got any questions, we give out all types of feedback on here. We want to know what y'all think.
I feel like maybe it could have been an accident, but if it was an accident, I feel like there was a lot of missteps in the process. I feel like a lot of it could have been handled differently. I don't know if I think that it was an accident or if he was murdered. I'm not sure. Parts of this make me think that it was just a horrible accident and the investigation was poorly handled, but then other parts make me think that he was murdered and it was covered up. So I'm
the bruises is what got me. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. At first, when I heard about it, I didn't know what to think. Then I started looking into it, and even still, before you know what I mean, the way they reacted to the situation when it first happened, was like a big red flag to me. Instead of trying to figure out what was going on, y'all, it seemed like everybody was trying to see right away, cover your own ass.
Yep.
And this is not a situation for you to do that, especially when a young boy who died. You know, whether he was murdered or whether he died accidentally. You know what I'm saying? So that was a big red flag to me. The way the evidence, like the chain of evidence, mind you, those big mats that were standing up, those never
mats used for cheerleading.
Yeah, but supposedly they weren't always standing up.
Yeah, it was over break.
Yeah, over break, because I guess this all happened 2 days after winter break. So him going through all that, and he's 17 years old. Why would he try to dive into those if he could have just pulled those down and just moved them out of the way to get his shoes?
Yeah.
And granted, he didn't have gym the day before, and him and his friend shared the shoes. So him and his friend could have already snatched them out. That probably weren't even in there.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was just a lot. It's a lot of stuff with this that I'm confused about, and it has me questioning the police, the schools, the coroner office, the funeral home, the FBI agent.
It also makes me sad as a mother because I can't imagine how his mom feels, and I would be doing the same thing she is doing. I would never stop looking for answers.
And we do want to send our condolences to Kendrick Johnson's family. We want to do this so we can try to spread the word. We know y'all been trying to do that, so we want to help out our way best possible so we can try to spread more awareness to this situation, this sad, unfortunate situation that's going on, and also bring some light to not just the injustice that minorities get, but open our eyes to the wrongful shit that the police be doing. Because this isn't the only case that the police be dropping the balls on shit. And we need some accountability.
I agree.
So y'all want y'all's thoughts? Let me know what y'all think. Let me know how y'all feel. Make sure y'all hit that like button, the subscribe button, and hit the notification too, so y'all can get those alerts when we drop those new videos. We love y'all. Thank y'all again for tuning in. Y'all be safe out there, especially with all these crazy shootings going on and stuff. So we wish y'all the best. Peace out.